Here with CUPE 3903 Chief Negotiator Graham Potts to gain a better perspective on the strike. How's it going, Graham? Welcome.
Good, good. No.
Okay, let's get started then. It's been almost a month and a half now. This strike process must be getting pretty hard on you guys, physically, emotionally, and financially. How much longer do you think you guys can stick this out?
We can stick it out as long as necessary. We're part of Canada's largest public sector union with over 500,000 members. Our National Defence Fund is quite healthy, as are our own local finances. Our members are willing to walk the lines as long as possible. We were actually hoping for a short resolution of the strike. We actually weren't looking for a strike in the first place. But as far as morale on the lines, it's quite good.
What about the sit-in at the President's office? Does this signal perhaps that you're moving your pickets from the gates to outside the President's office?
Well, the people participating in the sit-in are also students who are, like myself, rightly angry at the universities sort of let's just wait them out type of approach. Unfortunately, that won't work because we are part of Canada's largest union, which does provide us significant support, both people power and financially. So that type of approach from the university just won't work. The sit-in at the President's office was self-organized by some people who are our members, but also undergraduate students who rightly so want to see the university step up and start being responsive to their needs, which means getting the university back to the table.
Right. And while that's not a direct action of CUPE 3903, does CUPE 3903 support those people who are out there doing the sit-in at the President's office?
CUPE 3903 supports anyone who's calling for the university to supports anyone who is calling for the university to come back to the table. Is this an event that was organized by us? No. Are we providing pizza? Yes.
Now, how big an issue is 2010 for you guys? Everybody sort of knows, it's been widely broadcast, that a lot of the part-time faculty unions in Ontario are trying to simultaneously organize their contracts to end at the same time so that they can together lobby the provincial government. How big of an issue is it for CUPE 3903 to be on board with this?
It is an issue. It was endorsed at one of our general membership meetings. It's been something that we've been in constant discussion with. The idea is to actually work with the university to see more money come into York, and we don't exactly understand why they would be resistant to that. There's a number of other issues, which makes 2010 also important for us. The university is proposing across the board tuition increases in 2010. Although they've said in public that we currently have language that will protect us, that actually hasn't been agreed to at the table. And they're attempting to alter it in a way that they would be allowed to raise tuition, wiping out any type of actual wage increase we get.
One thing that I've heard a lot, there are a lot of complaints about the university administration perhaps adhering to a corporatization or neoliberalization model rather than the model of a public institution. However, I've heard Robert Drummond say that the university was a not-for-profit organization. Yes, it has a surplus, but it's not sort of running a profit. What would you say to that?
Well, I also sit on Senate, so I've been watching what they've been doing with the budget over the last couple years, and they have been running surpluses. Ironically, the one year they don't have a surplus is when they're negotiating with the two major CUPE locals on campus, as well as the staff association. And essentially, that's just a bookkeeping little trick they did, where they took all of the deferred maintenance to any building, anything they were going to do, anything they said they were going to do for about the past 5 years, claimed they were going to do it all this year, and they're projecting surpluses into the future.
So do you think that then they cooked the books on purpose? Is that what you're saying?
I couldn't say anything for sure, but when I looked at the budget breakdown, it looked like a load of crap to me, to be honest. I took a look at it and went, well, that's weird. Why is all this deferred maintenance being put into a year they're negotiating? Oh, I see it. So they can go to the public, say they're running a deficit. The university has been banking a healthy profit due to the increased undergraduate and graduate growth and the projected future undergraduate and graduate growth, which means they get more money from the provincial government for post-secondary education, except for it's not filtering down to the people who are supposed to be receiving it, which are the students that are coming in the people that make the university work, both the staff, the people who work at the university, as well as the teachers.
Okay, and now with this economic recession, I've heard some members of CUPE 3903 say that because a lot of people will be out of work, they'll be going back to school, and then perhaps the university would be taking in more revenue. However, university administration has said, well, that if they have more students here, then they're going to have to build more infrastructure, and in actual fact, they won't be gaining more revenue because they'll have to be spending more. What would you say in response to that?
Well, I mean, a lot of the actual buildings on campus come out of the endowment funds. The endowment funds are completely separate from the operating budget at York.
Right.
The operating budget is the funding they receive from the provincial government, tuition, that sort of thing. And we get our wages and benefits, our contracts are negotiated out of the operating fund. So any sort of attempt to say, well, we've got more students coming in, oh no, this is a bad thing, it's just rhetoric. Like, during economic recessions, the one sector in the economy that really benefits is the post-secondary education sector, because people come back to upgrade their skills, the provincial government puts more money in, there's the university's proposing to increase tuition, and so they actually do have more money.
And now what would you think about student groups, for example, such as York Not Hostage and other groups who claim that they're not really on either side of the issue, all they want to do is get back to class? What would you say about their call to binding arbitration? Because it looks, I guess, from their perspective, that both sides are nowhere near an agreement, and in such a situation would be the quickest way to get them back to class.
Well, with respect to York Not Hostage and the other groups calling for binding arbitration, there doesn't seem to be there either seems to be a misunderstanding of the labor relations process, which is whereby parties should bargain at the table, or it's an intentional misuse. Because binding arbitration always favors one group more than the other. York University publicly stated in 1997 that binding arbitration should never be used to settle a labor dispute with respect to the York University Faculty Association when they put it forward. Binding arbitration is not a solution. It simply imposes a settlement on groups. We've said quite publicly we're not willing to go there. The York Not Hostage group also tried to get provincial legislation, and the provincial government, through the Ministry of Colleges and Trainings, said quite publicly that binding arbitration, back to work legislation, it doesn't work. It leads to more labor strife. So for those student groups, they simply need to put pressure on the university to quit misleading them and saying, well, binding arbitration is a solution, because it's not one that we'll ever agree to.
Okay. And now, what's the biggest misconception that you think people have about the strike?
The biggest misconception is that we have a bunch of crazy demands that are on the table, when in fact what we have are proposals to slightly modify our collective agreements in order that they be in line they roughly be in line with sector average. The sector average, that they be in line with what we've historically negotiated with York in the past. And York is intentionally using Wi-Fi as well as other York community forums to mislead the public.
That was Graham Potts, Chief Negotiator for CUPE 3903.